Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we are discussing sexual abuse with professor and author Julie Macfarlane. Just viewer discretion is advised because we are discussing sexual-based violence in this episode. Professor Macfarlane, on the last segment, I asked you about this fiduciary relationship that can exist between a pastor, priest, minister, and a congregant, especially when they are seeking spiritual counseling. What do people know about what that relationship means and how it complicates the notion of consent?
Well, I think that most people would understand that a minister, if you're a member of a church, is going to be a very important authority figure for you. And certainly that was the case for me at that age, but it's also the case, of course, for people who continue to attend churches. And people often turn, as we know, to their priests or their ministers when they are in a crisis. They go there because they're in a crisis and they are vulnerable. And it is shocking to me how many times I have heard, because I hear a lot from survivors of clerical abuse, how many times I have heard from women who are grown women, they are often married women, they've gone to their minister as an authority figure because of some crisis they're experiencing in their lives, and then they are preyed on sexually. And I think that it's important that people understand that that is a complete aberration of what this relationship is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a trusting, confidential relationship. Obviously, when people go to a professional counselor or a therapist, they don't expect to get raped by them. And I think that one of the things that we have to put into this notion of consent to really understand what's going on is the relative power of the parties. And I know that for me, at that age, given that this was my minister who was abusing me, there was absolutely no way I could tell anyone because I didn't think I'd be believed. And I believe that that is the same even today for grown women who have experienced this kind of sexual assault when they have gone and reached out for help from their ministers.
Now, in your case, ultimately, criminal charges were also brought against this particular minister.
Yeah.
And you also were not the only person that he victimized. So what can you tell me about the criminal case?
Well, this was where it became even more surreal for me as a law professor. After I had done the civil case, I'm sorry, another victim of the same minister came forward. She had read about my case. She had seen, media coverage about it, and she went to the local police and reported basically exactly the same events with the same person also many decades before. And so the police came back to me and said that they now wanted to prosecute because they had two complainants, two same fact complainants. The minister was in Australia, probably not a coincidence. And he was then the first minister to be extradited from Australia for historic sex offenses to the United Kingdom. And he went to trial. Obviously, myself and the other complainant could not meet. We couldn't discuss with one another anything about what we were saying. All I knew was that it was from very much the same era, the same years that I had been assaulted by the same person. And the trial in the first instance was a hung jury. These are very, very difficult cases for juries, and I'm sure that it was very upsetting for members of the jury to hear some of the evidence that I gave and my co-complainant. It was brought back again a second time, and he was convicted and imprisoned as a result. The experience of testifying in a criminal trial is extraordinary. And even as somebody who is so used to public speaking and knew what that process would be like, I cannot really describe it as anything other than a battering when it came to defense cross-examination of me. And that is the kind of obstacle that makes it incredibly difficult for people to come forward and tell their stories.
One of the things that fascinated me about your civil case was that you were not just merely seeking monetary damages, which is important. It helps victims get back on their feet. But you also wanted systemic changes in how the church handled sexual abuse claims going forward. There were a number of things that you were distressed at, obviously, that you talked about, the claims in the statement of defense about consent, the use of limitation periods to try and bar claims, the forcing out of some churches of victims and complainants once they came forward with their claim. Ultimately, the church did appear to accept a number of your requests and demands as part of that settlement process. We've got to go to commercial break. But when we come back, I want to talk about those systemic changes you advocated for.